When you think of English monarchs, Elizabeth I is right up there, the Virgin Queen, Gloriana. But here's the crazy part. She was never, ever supposed to be queen. I mean, her mom was disgraced, executed, and yet Elizabeth ends up becoming one of the most powerful rulers in history. So how did she do it? Let's get into how this incredible survivor didn't just rule, but defined an entire age.
I mean, just listen to that. That's Elizabeth talking to her soldiers with the massive Spanish Armada literally on its way to crush them. The heart and stomach of a king. Wow. This quote, it's everything. It just perfectly sums up the central challenge of her whole life, right? A woman holding all the power in a world completely run by men. This was the image she built for herself.
But where does that kind of courage come from? It wasn't something she was just born with in a cozy palace. No, it was forged in absolute fire. To really get who she became as a queen, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning, to her incredibly dangerous childhood.
All right, Section 1, the unlikely heir. And unlikely is putting it mildly. Her childhood wasn't really a royal upbringing at all. It was more like a masterclass in survival. She had to navigate this world where one wrong word, one wrong move could literally get you sent to the executioner's block.
Just look at this timeline. It is pure chaos. After her dad, Henry VIII, dies, the throne becomes this crazy revolving door. First, her Protestant half-brother Edward. Then, you've got Lady Jane Grey's 9-day reign. That's a whole other story. And then comes her very Catholic half-sister, Mary. This was the political minefield Elizabeth had to somehow, some way, walk through.
2. She was just 2 years old when her entire world just collapses. Her own father has her mother, Anne Boleyn, beheaded. And in that one moment, Elizabeth goes from being the heir to the throne of England to being officially declared illegitimate. Just like that, she's a nobody, cast out completely.
And things did not get better when her sister Mary became queen. Not at all. Mary suspected Elizabeth of plotting with Protestant rebels, so where does she send her? Straight to the Tower of London. I mean, the Tower! She was eventually moved to house arrest here at Hatfield House, but the lesson was burned into her mind. She was always just one accusation away from death.
So you have to ask, how on earth did she survive all this? Well, she developed a personal motto. Video et taccio, I see and I keep silent. This wasn't just a catchy phrase. It was her entire survival strategy. It meant, be careful, watch everything, say nothing, never show your hand. She learned to play the long game, and that political smarts, that became her absolute greatest weapon.
Okay, Section 2, a queen's delicate balance. So against all odds, she makes it to the throne. She's 25. But the kingdom she inherits is a mess, just tearing itself apart over religion. Her number one job, the most critical task she faced, was figuring out how to stop England from collapsing into a bloody civil war.
And this is where you really see her genius at work. Look at the difference. Her sister, Bloody Mary, had tried to force Catholicism on everyone, literally with fire and blood. Elizabeth, who was a Protestant, knew that wouldn't work. So she comes up with this brilliant compromise, the Elizabethan religious settlement. It's basically a middle way. Yeah, the Church of England is officially Protestant, but she kept some of the rituals and decorations that Catholics were used to. Why? To keep the peace. It was incredibly pragmatic.
And check this out. This is just so smart. A lot of people back then, especially powerful men, were saying there's no way a woman can be the supreme head of the church. So what does Elizabeth do? She just changes the title. She becomes the supreme governor instead. It's a tiny, subtle change in words, but politically, it was huge. It shut down the critics and let her keep all the power.
All right, Section 3, the marriage gambit. So she solves one massive problem, the religious division, but another one pops up immediately. Her government, her people, pretty much all of Europe is staring at her, saying the same thing. Okay, now you have to get married and have a baby. The pressure to produce an heir and keep the Tudor dynasty going was just immense.
And the pressure was absolutely insane. Now, there was one guy she really did love, her childhood friend Robert Dudley. But that was a political disaster waiting to happen, especially after his wife died under, let's just say, very suspicious circumstances. So what does she do? She plays the game better than anyone. She dangled the possibility of marriage in front of all these foreign princes and kings for decades. It was her ultimate diplomatic tool, and she never, ever committed.
So this really becomes the big question of her life, right? Why did she stay the Virgin Queen? I mean, with the entire future of the kingdom on the line, why didn't she just pick someone? Was it because of all the trauma she saw with her father's marriages? Or was it just a cold, hard political decision?
Well, she gave a lot of different reasons over the years, but this quote, this one really nails it. I will have but one mistress here, and no master. See, she knew that if she married, her husband would legally and culturally become her boss, her master. And she was having none of that. So instead, she flips the script. She turns being unmarried into her greatest strength, telling everyone she was already married to England.
Okay, Section 4, Spies, Plots, and Warships. So while she's masterfully playing this diplomatic chess game with her marriage prospects, huge threats are building. And these threats are coming from two directions: a massive danger from the inside and an even bigger one from the outside.
The threat from within? It was her own cousin, Mary, Queen of Scots. Now, Mary was a Catholic, and to a lot of Catholics in England and across Europe, she was the rightful queen, not Elizabeth. After Mary had to flee Scotland, she ends up as Elizabeth's prisoner in England for nearly 20 years. And the whole time, she's like a magnet for every single plot to kill Elizabeth and put a Catholic back on the throne.
So this whole thing builds and builds, and for years, Elizabeth refuses to execute her cousin. I mean, she's still family, another anointed queen. But her spy master, a guy named Francis Walsingham, was basically running the world's best intelligence agency. He uncovers something called the Babington Plot, and he gets his hands on letters written by Mary herself that prove she was in on a plan to have Elizabeth assassinated. That was it, the smoking gun. With that proof, Elizabeth finally, and they say very reluctantly, signed the death warrant.
And now for the external threat. With Mary executed, King Philip II of Spain basically says, okay, that's it, I'm doing this myself. He puts together the biggest, most terrifying naval fleet anyone had ever seen, the Invincible Armada, and it had one single goal: sail to England, invade, get rid of this Protestant queen, and drag the country back to Catholicism by force.
This was a total David versus Goliath situation. The Spanish ships were huge, but the English ships were smaller, faster. They had brilliant commanders like Sir Francis Drake, who used clever tactics, like setting their own ships on fire and sending them into the Spanish fleet to cause panic. But let's be real, it wasn't just tactics. The Spanish made some big mistakes. And then, the weather. A huge storm, which the English called the Protestant wind, just shattered the rest of the Armada. So it was a mix of smarts, guts, and a whole lot of luck that saved England.
All right, last section, the Gloriana legacy. That victory over the Armada, that's what really turned Elizabeth from a queen into a legend. For the rest of her reign, she and her court worked really hard to build up this image, and she ended up presiding over this incredible time of cultural boom and national pride.
It's really fascinating. As she got older, her official portraits actually started to look younger. They became less about what she really looked like and more about an idea. She was Gloriana, this sort of mythical, ageless queen married to her kingdom. It was basically one of the best PR and branding campaigns in all of history, making her a living symbol of England itself.
And we call this the Golden Age for good reason. I mean, think about it. This is the time of William Shakespeare changing theater forever. It's when Sir Francis Drake sails all the way around the world. It's the beginning of global trade with the founding of the East India Company. But maybe most importantly, it's when England really started to see itself as a major player on the world stage. This new, confident national identity was born.
And this is where it all ends. Her tomb in Westminster Abbey. And here's the final, incredible twist to her story. She's buried in the exact same tomb as her half-sister Mary. Yep, the same Mary who threw her in the Tower of London. These two rivals who defined so much of England's story resting together for eternity. You just can't make this stuff up.
So when you boil it all down, who was Elizabeth I? Was she the ultimate survivor? The young girl who cheated death again and again? The brilliant political strategist who held a divided country together and stared down a superpower? Or was she a ruthless tyrant who signed death warrants for her own family? The truth is, after 44 years on the throne, she was probably all of those things at once. And that's what makes her so endlessly fascinating.